dear Bagginses and Boffins.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are talking about how Amazon's Lord of the Rings show directors will make their mark. So, as we know that there are going to be a number of directors involved with the series, as is the case more and more these days with these big budget TV shows having directors come in for certain types of episodes or certain types of storylines. And we saw it work very well. Obviously, we're not talking about the overall ending of Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones as a TV show and its run and longevity had a number of different directors involved, and I think that it worked perfectly. It's not very in your face. There's no big jumps in perspectives and how it all plays out. So I'm not too worried about the different directors, and I thought we would kind of like to just talk about a bit of these guys' previous works and how it might play out in the Lord of the Rings TV show. Do you have any thoughts on multiple director situations?
Well, I think that's kind of how shows are done. I'm not worried.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you have enjoyed a number of these big budget TV shows and not even big budget, some smaller budget TV shows as well, you'll have noticed multiple directors almost all the time. Very rarely do you get a director that goes from episode 1 through to the end. It can happen, but especially on something this large scale, I doubt that it could happen. Just because these directors, it's basically like they're doing movies all the time. That's how big these shows are getting. So the first guy to mention and talk about here is J.A. Bayona. Now, it sounds like this guy has got a lot going on from his earlier works, especially being someone associated with Guillermo del Toro. Man, it's a hard name to say. Anyway, we actually have something in common with him, is that he really enjoys the city of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So that's a fun little tidbit there. That's one of his favorite places to film, and he is a master at building out these scenes that just overflow with unique style and perspective. If you've ever seen any of his movies, really, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Just everything seems just so romanticized and almost in a fantasy. Even if you're not in a fantasy world, everything feels fantastical, which is what you want in something like this, which is something I think Peter Jackson, his tone and his imagery gets it exactly right. And so the fact that this guy is a mentee of him, I think that's wonderful news. And it does sound like he's got his own background in dealing with fantasy drama, which is what we're going for with this. Obviously there's going to be some battles, but the bulk of it, I think we're all expecting, is to be more of a fantasy drama. And so, I think it's great to see that kind of background being brought into this. And, I don't sense anything out of the ordinary with this. In fact, Del Toro did help out Peter Jackson as well. He was supposed to help him out on the original trilogy, I believe, and then he did end up helping on The Hobbit a bit. If I remember correctly, it was that he was supposed to direct some of the original trilogy and then had to back out, and so Jackson had to do all of it. We'll have to double check that, and maybe we'll do a whole video on that. But I believe that that's sort of how that came to be. But he was always a little bit involved in outlining how the project would be shot and this kind of thing. So he did have a hand, at least a little bit, in Lord of the Rings already. So to have someone who has kind of learned from him, that works out perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Wayne Chi Yip. I'm not as familiar with this person's work. So I'm familiar with Doctor Who, but that one, it doesn't I mean, let me know what you think about this, but I just don't see. Not saying it's a negative, but I just don't see how Doctor Who and a Lord of the Rings show have much in common. Just the style and the overarching story technique seems to be completely different. Uh, Doctor Who's a bit too silly for what I'm expecting from the Amazon show, so I just don't see how that comes into be. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think it'll be okay. I'm guessing that they probably won't have that much creative power. Like they're more like employee directors. They're kind of like, all right, you do this episode, you do this episode, you do this episode, and there'll be like kind of a producer overseeing this and making sure that the directors are doing what they want in a way.
Yeah,
I
that's
think it'll
true
be
for the story, but I think with Game of Thrones, for example, we did see that certain directors had a bit more eye for battle scenes or for
sure.
throne room scenes, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, you're right. I think it'll be okay. We'll just see. I don't know.
yeah, I just mean in terms of his earlier work, like some of the stuff looks
Yeah.
like it works directly. Something like Wheel of Time. I mean, it's not out yet, but I think the Wheel of Time does work in terms of how you would do a Lord of the Rings style show. I'm not too familiar with some of these other shows that he's involved in. Some of them I've heard of, and Salem and
Salem.
Preacher are a bit more towards it, but it still isn't quite the tone that I'm expecting. I haven't. I'll have to check out Wheel of Time when it finally drops to see what it feels like, because that at least that story, from what I know about it, does seem like it would fit a Lord of the Rings genre that we're going for. But yeah, I'm not saying this guy's not going to work. It's hard for me to see how these previous projects and how how his style fits in with the Lord of the Rings thing. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, these directors, they're going to be playing off each other, and like you said, they're going to have overarching producers and story editors to make sure that everything is still on the Tolkien estate outline of what they can put in. So yeah, they're still gonna, you're right, they're still not gonna have complete creative control, but I think they have a lot of control in just how it's shot. And as we have pointed out in critiquing certain episodes of Game of Thrones, you can kind of see how sometimes the style doesn't really fit for what they were probably going for, or what you would hope they would go for. But a lot of these shows do seem to have a pretty successful run. Obviously, Doctor Who is just running from I don't even know when, the 70s. So the Doctor Who,
the 60s.
60s, yeah. So the Doctor Who aside, these other ones do seem to have a nice following. So he's doing something right. And so hopefully that comes along with the Amazon show as well.
Yeah. And then Charlotte Brandstrom.
Yeah, nice to see a female director involved here. So that's always cool to see. There's not very many of them. So the fact that you got one that's also going to be able to, bring the epic fantasy world to life. So she did 2 episodes of Outlander. Obviously Outlander is not the same style of show. Outlander is a lot more of a romantic drama than it is a fantasy epic about good and evil. But she did do The Witcher. And again, as we've talked about, The Witcher isn't a direct comparison to Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, but I think it does show how they're able to play the characters in with the world that is either being built or already built. And so that's why I like to see these directors do stuff that at least feels like it's in the same style. And that's why I was kind of questioning the previous directors, just because the style of those shows seems a bit different than what I'm expecting, which is a more Game of Thronesy, big overarching narrative of 5 to however many seasons they do, that all completely works together. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what she can bring to it. I do wonder which one of these guys is. It seems like the first guy is going to be doing more of a battle. This J.A. Bayona.
Maybe.
Just because we know that Isildur is going to appear in episode 3, and so within the first 2 episodes, we're going to have we at least have some semblance of a battle, right? Because we're at least going to have to see what's going on with Isildur, either leading up to or just after a big battle. So I'm assuming some battles coming in within those first 3 episodes, but obviously we'll have to wait and see, because maybe they do it sort of like Game of Thrones and do it off camera a little bit, like they did in the earlier Game of Thrones episodes, where Tyrion is actually involved in a battle that happens off screen. But then again, like with now, what are your thoughts on this with Amazon's show? Like Game of Thrones had a much smaller budget in those days.
Yep. Amazon had the budget to do a battle.
Can Amazon get away with? Obviously, I'm saying like story style might work. I'm not saying that, but can they get away with not showing certain battles for
Well, I think people would wonder where the money went.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like how much leeway do they get when they try to be say, oh, this is more for a storytelling technique? It's gonna be like, well, no, you have the money to show us this instead of just telling us. I mean, if Lord of the Rings can do 2 amazing battles at the end of their 2 movies, and actually, I still really like the chaotic battle at the end of Fellowship, and even Moria. Moria has a fantastic battle.
Fellowship's fine.
Yeah. So like, you don't even need a big set piece with a castle, but you need to have battles like that play out. And so for you to just say it's off screen, they need to show that stuff. So yeah, I think we're on the same page with that.
Well, you couldn't have had Moria off screen. It'd be funny. we go through the melon, and then we come up the end. Gandalf died. All those.
I wanna be. You know what I'm gonna do? when I get the big box set of the 4K Blu-ray 37 disc set or whatever it was, I'm going to edit a new version of Fellowship where we cut out all the battles and just have the right before the battle and then like the aftermath and see how it plays.
It'd be horrible. No, it wouldn't be good. It'd be really strange.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's no way you cut out a death like that and be like because both battles result in key character deaths. You've got Gandalf at the end facing the Balrog, and you got Boromir at the end defending Merry and Pippin from a bunch of orcs. And if you just cut that, there's no way. Like, people would be like, "What the heck are you talking about? We've seen these guys like do crazy things. Like, you need to show us how they were able to like be overwhelmed." Because with the case of Boromir, I mean, that Uruk-hai just freaking cheats. He shoots him with arrows. He won't even face him straight up in a duel. What a cheater. Even when Boromir's on the ground, on his knees, the guy comes up with a bow, and he's going to bow him from point blank. Are you kidding me with that? That is an outrage.
He's mad about Ariana Grande stealing his hairstyle.
That's true. Yeah, he's furious, and he's going to take it out on poor old Boromir. But yeah, I think that's it for this one. Let us know in the comments down below if you've seen any of the shows and movies that these directors have done and what you thought of that. And, how you think that's going to play in with the Amazon Lord of the Rings TV show. For me, I think that there is a lot of good that I'm seeing here from their previous work. I'm going to have to look into this Wayne Chi Yip guy's past projects, because a lot of them do seem to have some pretty good success. I personally haven't checked them out, so I'm gonna go take a look at the Salem and Preacher especially, and then I haven't even heard of Hunters, so gonna have to look into that one. And then obviously Wheel of Time when it drops, that's gonna be for me my biggest factor in seeing how he's able to tell. Because the problem with the Amazon TV show is not only do you have to tell a great story, but you also have to build background lore at the same time. And you have to make it so that when we get to another step in the story, that we have all the prerequisite lore and everything that we need ready to go. And Peter Jackson does it the best I've ever seen in terms of movies. It's just, everything is exactly as you need it. Obviously, there's some random scenes that we can make fun of, but for the most part, you have all the lore and background you need for when the characters are making decisions and getting into situations. You understand what's at stake, how they feel about things, and there's none of this like, oh, why did this guy do this, or why did they take these hot, like, you know what I mean? Like, that you know exactly why characters are behaving the way they are based on background knowledge that you've obtained earlier.
Yep.
But yeah, that's it for this one, and we will see you guys next time.
I regret to announce this is the end. I bid you all a very fond farewell.